Shavuot is a very, very powerful time. We know that every holiday has its potential and its strength and its energies that come down to this world. And these energies, we feed off these energies. So, for example, Pesach is a Zman Cherutin, it's a time of freedom, and we feed off that freedom. A person that's locked into a situation, this is the time where he could pray to God and muster all his energies and get out of that rut, or get out of that boxed-in situation. And every holiday has its own uniqueness. Sukkot, maybe perhaps the protection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shavuot is Matan Torah. Shavuot is the power of the Torah coming down, the power of us accepting the Torah. Each holiday has its own uniqueness. And it's interesting that each holiday also has something that symbolizes that holiday. For example, Pesach, you have matzah. Rosh Hashanah, you have the shofar. Sukkot, you have the sukkot, the lulav, the esrog. Right? Every holiday has something. Comes to Shavuot, there's nothing there. What are we commemorating? Right? There's no symbol, so to say. So I heard once from someone that the idea of Shavuot, it's because you're actually celebrating with no distractions. In other words, you're making yourself a vessel that is ready to accept the Torah. And that in itself is tremendous work. That in itself takes 49 days to shape yourself into a type of person that's able to accept this enormous gift. The Ari HaKadosh says that we know a person sometimes is liable to karet. Karet is spiritual extinction, where a person is no longer connected, could still function, could still walk around in this world, but at the source of his neshama, it's cut off. It's cut off from God. The source is cut off from God. And what's the remedy to that? So it says if a person learns all night, Shavuot night, he can remedy that. Now it's very interesting, that energy that a person expands, where he's not allowing himself to sleep, on any ordinary night, says the Ari HaKadosh, he would wipe away one chorus. One chorus. But come Shavuos night, a person has the power to wipe away all of the karet that he has if he's learning diligently all night. It's just a tremendously powerful time, and a person has to know that this is not a time I want to squander. This is a time that I have to make sure to learn every single moment, as much as I can. Our potential in life in general is either to reach to the stars, or God forbid, the other way around. And you see this with our society very clearly. And that's one of the reasons that comes Shavuot, and we read Megillas Ruth. We read the scroll of Ruth. What was the story of Ruth? The story of Ruth was that there was an individual by name Abimelech and Naomi. And Elimelech was married to Naomi. And they were very, very wealthy. They were very wealthy. At one point, they decide, hey, I can't stay here in Israel because I'm losing a lot of money. Not only I'm losing a lot of money, poor people are constantly banging them down my door. It's getting way, way too difficult. So they decide to move to Moab, and they reside over there. And their children, Machlon and Kilyon, marry Rus and Arpa, who are the daughters of the king, the daughters of the king of Eglon, King Eglon. And God is obviously not too happy with this. You know, he leaves Eretz Yisrael to go to Moab. Many Jews needed him at that point. You know, this is where God wanted him. That God didn't want him sitting and learning in tranquility. He wanted people knocking down his doors all the time. Every time he opened up a book to sit and learn, somebody would knock down his door. But that's many times, that's what God wants for this person. This is his job. To be wealthy is a tremendous responsibility. Rabbi Yisroel Salanta used to say, I'm happy I'm not wealthy. Why? Because when I come after 120, God is going to ask me, this lady, this poor almana suffered, why didn't you take care of her? This poor widow suffered, why didn't you take care of her? Well, God, you didn't give me money. You didn't give me money. So, fine. That's not my job. But to a guy that was given money, what is he going to answer, right? It's a tough job. It's a tough obligation. We were just studying the halachas of tzedakah this morning. And one of the halachas is that a person, what the Aruch HaShoshan speaks about, is that a person has to understand that when God gives him money, he gives him a lot of money, more than he needs. It's not for him. Not for himself, really. It's for other people. Of course, a person wants to put some away so he can have for retirement. Yeah, absolutely. But yet, the person always has to have in mind that it's for me to help others as well. And if a person chases tzedakah, he always wants to give tzedakah, God will prepare for him the right people to give it to. Right? A lot of times people ask, how do I know? How do I know that this guy is legitimate? Right? He says he's got 10 children. Let me hear him list the name of all 10 children. Right? How do I know he's legitimate? Well, if you run after tzedakah, God will give you only the legitimate ones. God will give you the legitimate ones. So therefore, it's up to us to get the legitimate ones. But in any event, this Elimelech, I'm sorry. This Elimelech couldn't tolerate that people were constantly coming over to him. So he went out of Eretz Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, after a while, punished him and he killed him. And he died. And the same thing happens to his 2 children, Machlon and Kilyah, who were married to Ruth and Orpah. And when that happens, Naomi realizes, I've got nothing here. I have nothing here. I might as well go back to Israel. And she begins to go back, and her 2 daughter-in-laws follow her. 2 daughter-in-laws want to come with her. And they begin the journey, and Naomi tries to dissuade them. And dissuades them once, and dissuades them twice. And the 3rd time she succeeds in dissuading Orpah. And Orpah gives her a kiss, and she turns back, and Ruth continues. And from that moment on, literally 2 girls with the same potential, grew up in the same house, all of a sudden make totally different decisions. One decides to become a Jew. They both wanted to. They were both very close to Judaism. They both valued it. They were married to great people. They loved Judaism. They both wanted to continue that lifestyle. But one, after being pushed away, decides to go one way, and the other clings to Ruth. One literally steps off the stage of history in terms of Yiddishkeit, and one stays. One stays. And what ends up happening, what happens to both of them? So the Gemara in Saita tells us that not only did Orpah just go back to her house, but she met a battalion of 100 soldiers and committed a bad act with them. So meaning to say, she was at the crossroads of tremendous godless, tremendous heights, and in an instant, she loses everything. Ruth, on the other hand, holds on a little bit more. And when she is ready to go with Naomi, she begins her trek to Eretz Yisrael. She later is with Boaz. And when she is with Boaz, she becomes the mother of Mashiach. She becomes the mother of David HaMelech. two separate paths. One chooses and becomes the mother of a spiritual giant, and one becomes the mother of a physical giant. The physical giant becomes Goliath. The spiritual giant is David HaMelech, who later we have Mashiach from. But you see sometimes how everything depends on 1 second, on 1 second decision. I remember being at a levaya, and I see the family. I see one side of the family very, very religious, and the other side is nothing. You know, we see that a lot. And it's so interesting to see how from one family, it just split up. Then one guy got up to speak. And he describes how his family came from Europe. And they were deciding, the whole family was deciding, either they're going to go live in Virginia or they're going to go live in Borough Park. I don't understand exactly the two sides of this decision. I assume Virginia is much, much different. And listen to what happened. So they were deciding, there were two families. They applied to two homes. They didn't have anything. They didn't have a penny to their name. They applied to two homes. And one home in Borough Park accepted one family. And the other home felt it would be too risky. So one family ended up in Virginia and one family ended up in Borough Park. He says it was such a decision. It was literally on a hair. What was going to be our entire future? And because of this decision, my mother fought a little bit more with the landlord. All of a sudden, generations later, you see the kids, yeshiva kids. It was amazing, yeshiva kids. You couldn't tell. But what was it? It was literally a second. A second makes all the difference in the world. That second decision. Whether a kid goes to yeshiva, where you decide to live. There are so many decisions in life that are based on that little second where a person decides his entire life and his entire potential, his entire career, and the rest of his life is going to be different. A second is very powerful. Rabbi Miller used to say, if you want to know how valuable 1 second is, how valuable is a second? Second is nothing, right? There's nothing there. He says, we understand an hour you could do something, you could accomplish something, right? But a second, can you do anything in a second? He says, go ask the guy who was on his way to a $10 million business deal and missed the flight by a second. He'll give you a whole lecture on what a second is all about. He could give you a lecture for days. What is a second worth? Right? And therefore, Matan Torah and Rus, we always learn Rus on Matan Torah, to teach us the power of even a short amount of time. Short amount of time. There was one of the Gedolim. One time, he made a siyum. And he said this siyum, usually when he made a siyum, he would make a l'chaim, he would go back to learning. This time he wanted to make a little bit of a party. He invited his whole family. So I think it was the Chassam Sofer. So the Chassam Sofer, his family asked him, what's the difference between this time and all the other times? Why this time warranted a whole party? So he said, this is the time where I finish Shas in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. He says, what do you mean? Shas is the whole tractate, right? All of Talmud. He says, I grabbed 2 minutes here. When I was waiting online in the grocery, I still opened my book and I grabbed another 2 minutes there, and another 5 minutes, and another 3 minutes, another 4 minutes. And now, it's 15 years, but I finished Shas in 5 minutes. because each one of those 5 minutes I didn't waste. This warrants a special party, because those 5 minutes nobody pays attention to. Nobody ever pays attention to 5 minutes. 5 minutes is nothing, right? We're busy looking at our Facebook. 5 minutes is nothing. But this warranted a special party. Everything else, every other time I finish Shas is one thing. But when I finish Shas in the 5 minutes, that was something unique. So here, we look at Ruth and we look at Naomi. And Ruth and Naomi, they represent literally two opposites who are on the same road. Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, remember, I'm going to give you a set of laws. I'm going to give you a set of laws. These set of laws are there to bring you to eternal life, to eternal happiness. There's nothing in life that's going to give us greater happiness than keeping the Torah. We could have many things, many items, but our neshama is still going to feel a void. Right? A person could have many, many things. Right? It's like somebody once told me. He goes to me, people are so poor. All they have is money. It's an interesting concept. What does that mean? Because if a person doesn't have Torah, he doesn't have the fulfillment. Yes, he'll have many items, but what the neshama seeks, he'll never have. If you think about it, why does a person travel? He travels here, goes to Hawaii, yes, sometimes it's healthy to let the mind go. But a person's neshama is always in search mode. He's searching for something. There's something there that doesn't let a human being rest. Always wants more and more. What is that? You have to pinpoint what that is. What is that? That's a person's natural neshama yearning for something higher. We live in a generation where we don't know, actually. The world doesn't know what's better, what's worse, what's good, what's bad. It's literally like a scuba diver. When a person goes into an ocean, if you lose your bearings, you may think that down is up and down, and you may be going lower and lower and deeper into the ocean. And many times what they tell the scuba divers is to start blowing out bubbles so you realize which way is up. Because otherwise you lose completely where you are in the world, or where you are in the ocean. And in a sense, that's exactly what happens in the real world too. In the real world, you have people searching for what is right and what is wrong. And the New York Times has their own set of ideas of what's right and what's wrong. And they'll tell you, these people, they came out of the closet, or they're finally admitting who they are, and they're proud of who they are. We've reached a new era. Humanity is getting better. But in reality, it's a person searching for more. They're searching what to cling on to. Whether I'm going to cling on to communism or socialism or capitalism or liberalism, or I got to cling on to something, because otherwise my life is not worth anything. There's something that I'm missing. So a person is in constant search. He never stops. Therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to cut all of this hardship that you have, that a soul has. Avraham Avinu went through that hardship. Avraham Avinu had to search. He searched. Which way is right? Which way is up and which way is down? He searched. He had to ask a million questions. Avraham Avinu came and asked, this world doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense that my mother could eat carrots all day and produce a human being with eyes and with hair and with intelligence and with understanding and with teeth. How do you take carrots and produce all that? He started asking all these questions, and he came to the conclusion that there must be a governing hand. There must be a Ribbono Shel Olam in the world. There must be a God in the world. And which means to say, up to that point, people lived a wasted existence. They would live 100 years, but not know what their purpose in life is. They wouldn't know what their purpose in life is. Comes the Torah and cuts all that research for us and tells us black and white how to live. How to live, what's right and what's wrong. And this is the idea of Matan Torah. As Rabbi Yosef used to say, Ilav ha-yoima kama yoyse iku b'shuka. If not for this great day, kama yoyse, how many Joes, so to say, would be in the marketplace? What made me different? What made me different is Kabbalah Torah. As soon as we got the Torah, I was able to then be a different person. I was able to be a Rabbi Yossi. That's what made all the difference in my life. We come to Kabbalah Torah and we learn Ruth, and we learn the idea what happened with Arpa. And the idea HaKadosh Baruch Hu is driving home to us. When you make decisions, realize that that 1 second can have ramifications for years and years down the line. And a person could either gain or lose a tremendous amount. A person thinks to himself, do I send my kid to this yeshiva or that yeshiva? This yeshiva is a little bit more religious, that yeshiva is a little bit less. A person makes a decision, do I send my kid to public school or yeshiva? At that point, it's a life and death decision for eternity. For eternity. Right? The children's children. You're lucky if somebody comes back. But it's all gone. And it's all on one little decision. I remember a lady here coming over to me. She had a lot of problems with her child. So I asked her, she had one child. I asked her, I got close to her. I asked her, why didn't you have more children? So she tells me, I never told anybody this, but when we got married, we didn't have money. And I got pregnant, and I aborted a child. So, I made that decision, but I can't live with myself up to today. Up to today, it chases me. That one decision ruined my life. It's a 1 second decision. No guidance. The dollars and cents don't add up. Today they're wealthy. Today she's rich. She kicks herself. Could have had 10 kids, supported 20 kids today. But at that moment in time, she was poor. At that moment in time, she made a quick decision, which costed her entire life inner tranquility and inner peace. She lives with it day in and day out. We have to remember that all our decisions either will yield us to be a mother of a physical giant or a mother of a spiritual giant. We have to remember that our goal in life always is to be that mother of a spiritual giant or that father of a spiritual giant. And every decision we make, we have to think down the line, what is it going to mean? What is it going to mean for our children? What is it going to mean for our spouse? What is it going to mean for our community? What is it going to mean? And then we will have a much more focused decision. Kabbalah Torah comes to tell us, remember those seconds. Remember that individual that missed the plane by a second. He'll tell you what it's all about. 1 second, how it can make such a big difference in a person's life. We should be zocher that this Kabbalah Torah, when we stay up all night, we should remember that chas v'shalom, if we're chayav any chorus, it's all erased. We have to make that decision. It's a one-night decision. But we have to make that decision that night we're up and we're learning, because at the end of the day, that can make all the difference in the world for the eternity that we're going to have. So with Hashem's help, let's get here. We'll get here on time. We'll study hard. And Be'ezrat Hashem will be zeiche to have the right effect and the proper learning for the night of Shavuos. Amen.